Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 132 in the series. Welcome back to the yarn room. It's lovely to see all of you. It is Sunday morning here, and I'm coming to you from New York. It is probably I'm thinking it might be the last day of summer, so we've got some sunshine, and I think we're gonna get up to like 80 degrees today. So I'm hoping that Spencer and I can get out there and enjoy the last little bits of summery goodness. I hope it's all is good with you wherever you are. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome. It's lovely to meet you. This is usually a podcast about sweaters and sweater design, modification, all that kind of good stuff. But I do knit all kinds of other things, and I actually have a scarf in progress right now. We'll talk about that in a minute. And if you're coming back to the podcast, it's great to see you. I've had so much fun getting to know so many of you through the YouTube comments and email and our Zoom group and our Ravelry group. So if you're interested in any of those things, all of the links for getting in touch are down below in the video description. And if you're interested in joining our Saturday Zoom group, just send me an email and I'll send you the info about that. We meet on Saturdays and we've had a wonderful group. We were doing it for the KAL that I was running last year, the 1st to 51st Sweater KAL, and then that finished up and we've just kept meeting. So it's just turned into a really fun group, and I enjoy their company so much. So it's great to have that every Saturday. And we've moved on to a new KAL, the TV Knitting KAL, and this will run from October to October basically. And if you want to knit a pattern that has something to do with a TV show or a movie, this is the KAL for you. So it doesn't have to be a sweater, it could be any accessory, and it could be either from a show, like maybe you picked up the Outlander book or the new Mr. Rogers book or something from Star Wars or whatever it is. That's all good. It could be a sweater or an accessory or a knitted object that you see in a movie that you're watching or in a TV show, and you're clicking screenshots or trying to capture it up with your phone or something like that. Any of those things are fair game, and even using yarn that's inspired by television and movies would be fair game for this one. So we have a Ravelry thread going. People are picking projects right now, and we started talking about it in the Zoom group a little bit. So it's going to be a fun year of knitting things related to TV and movies. I've picked out my first project that I'll talk about. It's a little scarf, and I have on tap a sweater that I saw in a film. I think it was called LOL. Yes, it was a Miley Cyrus film. I'll keep talking about that. But her friend, another character in the movie, has this beautiful striped, kind of rainbow striped sweater that I am dying to design, kind of like write up and choose the yarn for and knit. So that is going to be, I think, my main TV knitting project. So we'll see how it goes. I'll give you updates on the podcast. Usually I tell you at the beginning here where you can find me. So I've already mentioned Ravelry. Everywhere I'm knitting the stash. So on Ravelry, on Instagram, there's a Facebook group, and then here on YouTube, obviously, and over on the website, which is knittingthestash.com. And that's where I have all the info about my knitting, my online knitting classes, and the Flock Farm Yarn Shop, where I sell small batch yarn from all over the United States. And it's a good place to find me if you're looking for me and you need to get in touch. So otherwise you can just email me at knittingthestash@gmail.com. So today's episode has a finished object. Talk about that in a minute. I have a new project that I've just put on my needles, and Spencer's gonna come on because he's been hearing about this sweater for the last month. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about perseverance or persistence in long-term projects and how we deal with motivating ourselves. And it's kind of a topic that I think is pretty important for knitters or crafters and makers and creative people of all kinds, because we often get ourselves into these long-term projects and we reach little stumbling blocks or places where we're maybe a little bit not as engaged, or we just want these things to be over, or whatever it is, and it takes a little perseverance to get through it. So Spencer's going to come on and we will talk all about that topic. First though, I want to introduce you to Azami. This is a sweater that actually took me, I think it took a full month of knitting, and that may sound strange to be a long-term project, but for me, I usually knit sweaters in 2 or maybe 3 weeks, so to go for 4 or 5 weeks on a sweater is, for me, a very long-term project. And you've seen this one, I think a couple episodes ago. I showed you the swatch for it, and then there was a tutorial about yoke depth, and I think the last time I showed it to you, it didn't have any sleeves, so it's been in the making for quite some time, and I'm very happy to introduce you to this sweater in full at this point. So the Azami sweater, like I said, is a pattern that was designed by Valentina Bogdanova, and if you look at her patterns, they're really gorgeous, and a lot of times she's very playful with the yokes and even a little bit below the yoke. Lots of lace, lots of cables, and she has a very distinctive style that I like, and I really like the way that she puts together these lace yokes in particular. So I'll bring this one up to the camera so that you can see it. And you can see that this one has both lace open work and it has smocking. So the parts of this that are the smocking are, let's see, I'm trying to get my finger to go to the right spot. So this is smocking here, and same up here, smocking and smocking here, and then this is more of the lace work. I think it's gonna show up on the camera, hopefully it's focusing. But it's a beautiful lace yoke, and it begins with a kind of twisted rib. She does incorporate short rows into the back, so I'll bring this a little bit closer as well. You can see that the back neck here is a bit longer and higher than what I showed you in the front in terms of the ribbing that's included there. So there's good short row shaping, so you can see probably, yeah, from the side, I think you can see the front is sitting lower than the back, which is sitting up here. So there's some nice shaping in her pattern. She pays attention to things like short rows and yokes and things like that, and yoke depth. Now I had to make some modifications to this one, as you all know. I love to modify anyway. But this one, I was knitting it in Georgia Rustic wool, which is a yarn from the Flock Farm Yarn Shop. And this particular, I have a bunch of different kinds of Georgia Rustic wool in the shop, and this is Joanne Mackey, who is in Georgia. She's raising a flock of Gulf Coast native sheep, and she's done some interesting blends. So I do have 100% Gulf Coast native in the shop, and we've talked about that breed of sheep on here before. It's a very interesting breed. And she's done some blends as well. So this particular yarn that I was using is a blend of Gulf Coast native and CVM Rommeldale. And we talked about CVM Rommeldale in here as well on another episode. So CVM Rommeldale I think of as having, being a little bit of a finer fiber than a Gulf Coast native. And so when you put the two together, you get a beautiful yarn that's very drapey. So it's kind of lightweight and ideal for lace. This happens to be a 2-ply, so it's ideal for lace. And it's very, very soft. So the yarn does have a few little neps in it that, you know, I was just pulling out as I was knitting. But overall, I feel like the effect of this yarn for this particular pattern is really beautiful because it has this kind of variation in the oatmeal, in the kind of background. It's all natural colored. So it's just this beautiful oatmeal shade, and it has this kind of tonal variation to it. So it has some a little bit darker kind of oatmeal khaki coloring, and sometimes a little bit lighter oatmeal kind of coloring. So when you put it together in a sweater, you do get this, it looks almost like it has a real depth of field to it, to my eye, which is lovely. So it's not just like a flat color. And I like the way that it shows up with the different browns and tans and things throughout the sweater. Now I didn't do any kind of helical switching, so I didn't actually swap any of my skeins out, but I don't see, to my eye, I don't see any places where you know, you can see the addition of a new skein of yarn. Sometimes you have that with dyed yarns, or even sometimes with natural yarns that have this little bit of variation in them. But I don't see that, and I think it's because the yarn itself is a little bit thick and thin, and it has that kind of background color variation going on. So it really just blends together really nicely into the actual fabric of the sweater. The yarn, like I said, it does have a little bit of a thick and thin thing going on, a little bit almost like a hand spun. And so I was curious what was going to happen with this portion of the sweater. It was looking a little bit crimped up. So it had some variation because of the thick and thin going on here. But once I washed it, the whole thing just completely relaxed into this beautiful fabric that has some texture to it, and it has some depth of field. So I really just absolutely love the way this turned out. And I think, like I said, the yarn was really great for the lace because it's a 2-ply, so it really pops with it allows the lace to roll open and kind of do what it needs to do. So, okay, I promised you modifications, and I did do some modifications. I shortened the yoke depth on this sweater, and that was in part because the gauge I was getting with the Georgia Rustic wool was a slightly different gauge than what was called for in the pattern. So I knew that I wouldn't be able to fit all of her rows into my upper yoke without it being too long in the armpit, and I talk about that in the tutorial video. So I shortened it by cutting out, I think 2 rows, at least 2 rows up here, maybe 2 rows from the short row section, and then 2 rows down at the very bottom. So by cutting out, I think it was about 6 rows, so it was about an inch for me in my gauge. I was able to fit the entire yoke pattern into the sweater without having to worry that it was going to be too long and overflow into that armpit area. Now, if you're ever going to do that, one of the things to think about is to try to take those rows or rounds out up higher. You can see with a pattern like this, it starts up high, but there is some ribbing up here that gives you some play. So always look for those places where you have a little bit more play. And I would suggest taking, if you're concerned about a yoke depth, taking out those rows at the top is going to be much more useful than waiting until the bottom and trying to take them out. For me, I don't mind having a little bit of plain work right here before I split for the sleeves. I have, 3/4 of an inch or a half an inch of plain knitting. I'm fine with that, and I'd rather have the plain knitting at that point than be struggling to fit in the last rows of the pattern and wondering if my armpit is going to be hanging too low. So, like I said, take the rows out at the top if you can, and then leave yourself some plain knitting at the bottom, because otherwise you can't always adjust if you've gone too far, if that makes sense. So I did that adjustment. I also changed the ribbing at the bottom hem and on the sleeve cuffs. I think the pattern calls for something like a ½ inch of this twisted rib that you also see up in the collar, and I just wanted to have more of it. I think it anchors the sweater, it gives it a little bit of balance and proportion. So I went for almost just over 2 inches of twisted rib for each of the cuffs and for the hem. I also did a split hem, which I tend to do now with any of my pullovers. I just do a split hem. I love the way that sits on my body. It doesn't cinch in. It's one of the reasons I don't like ribbing at the bottom of a sweater. You all have heard me talk about this before. So by adding that longer ribbing and the split hem, I just really love the way this sweater just kind of hangs. It doesn't have a lot of pulling in at the waist, which I prefer. And last episode, I also mentioned to you that I did just a little bit of shaping in this back area to bring in some of the fabric. So if you want to check that out, that's on the last episode. But basically, I just did some shaping here to draw in some of this fabric rather than doing any shaping on the sides of the sweater. But even with those modifications, I really do love the original pattern. I like the way that Valentina has written the pattern. I like her sense of style and her sense of proportion. It's a beautiful sweater. It really is a beautiful sweater. I don't know that this camera is going to do it justice, so I'll try to put some pictures in here, both of it on the mannequin and with me wearing it, so that you can get the full sense of what it actually looks like as a 3-dimensional object. But it's classic. It's just one of those sweaters that is going to be wonderful to wear, especially in these kind of shoulder seasons, because it is lightweight. I couldn't believe how light it was when I finished it. And warm at the same time, but just kind of like a beautiful transitional weather piece. So I'm really excited about it, and I would highly recommend her other pattern. She's a good pattern writer, and the sweaters turn out well. They turn out like they're supposed to, so I'm pretty happy about this one. And if you're at all interested in the Georgia Rustic wool, like I said, I used this blend of the Gulf Coast Native and CVM Rommeldale, which is a kind of beautiful oatmeal. It's in a light fingering. But I've also designed a cowl with her 100% Georgia Rustic wool in the 2-ply, and that is a plain natural white yarn, which is also beautiful. And there's a fun fire and ice cowl that I put together for that one. She has some alpaca blends in the shop, so this is a beautiful alpaca blend that is also a kind of oatmeal-y color. This one's 75% Gulf Coast Native and 25% alpaca, and it's more of a DK weight. So definitely not a fingering weight, more of a DK weight yarn. Really beautiful color and incredibly soft, and I just love the way that it was spun. It's just a beautiful, beautiful yarn. That one's been really popular in the shop. I don't have much of it left. And then this was also spun in the same way by the same mill. This is 100% Gulf Coast Native in a natural white. Just a beautifully soft yarn. This one's 100% Gulf Coast Native as well. So all of those are in the shop. And if you're interested in checking out and learning more about Joanne Mackey's work at Georgia Rustic Wool, I have an interview up with her. She's producing this beautiful yarn from a flock down in Georgia, and it's always been fun to talk to her and work with her and have so many different varieties of her yarn in the shop, because it's all really beautiful, and it's fun to see one breed of sheep, Gulf Coast Native, spun up in different ways and blended with different fibers to see what you can get. So it's a yarn I would highly recommend. And before Spencer comes on, I just want to give you a preview of my TV knitting for now. And I actually cast this on during the Saturday Zoom. Woe to me, because it's all cable-y and different stitches. So I got as far as I could, and the ladies on the Zoom were just laughing and laughing because I was trying to work on this while talking to them. I literally printed the pattern out on Saturday and started working on it. I'm knitting it up in this mystery yarn. It is a mystery Irish yarn, 100% wool of some kind or another, sent to me by Albina McLaughlin, and you might be familiar with her pattern. She has a beautiful array of patterns up on Ravelry. She's an independent designer out of Ireland, and she does gorgeous work. We were doing some yarn exchanges a few years back, and this is one that she sent me. I love it. It is beautiful, and it is chunky. So I think I'm knitting on size 7 needles with this, and it is going so fast. It's amazing. I'm really enjoying this. And this one is based on the Lord of the Rings movies, so that's where the TV knitting comes in. So hopefully I will get more done on this, which I'm really excited about. The size 7 needles, man, that just goes fast. And I will show you my progress on that as we go. I hope more of you will get involved in the TV Knitting KAL and head over to Ravelry and let us know what you're thinking about working on, because it's been so fun to hear about everybody's projects and to hear that I'm not the only one taking screenshots of movies and TV shows when I see a really good sweater or cowl or pair of mittens or something like that. So I hope you'll come join us. So with all that being said, how about we bring Spencer in and talk a little bit about perseverance on these long-term projects that a lot of us are engaged in. And we need a little motivation, and we need to know how to keep going and how to keep our patience, keep our persistence with these projects. So Spencer came on the cast today because he heard about the month-long sweater knitting project. He's been hearing actually about it for a month.
A little bit of grousing.
A little bit. It was just a long process. It was one of those sweaters where I actually thought to myself, if only I had a circular knitting machine, I could just put the body on and it would have been so great. Because the upper part was really fun. It was interesting, there was a lot going on, it was kind of stressful.
By the time you got to the body,
it was just stockinette.
And the sleeves.
Just straight up stockinette.
So the topic of today's conversation?
Perseverance.
Perseverance.
We do have the dogs up here, so there's going to be a little like moving around and heavy breathing. That's not. It has nothing to do with us. No, it's just
perseverance. So under that category, can we also say
persistence,
fortitude,
patience,
stick-to-itiveness?
Ooh,
is that a word? Is that like a hyphenated kind of
stick-to-itiveness? We play this word game every morning called the Spelling Bee, and we sometimes make up words. We love to make up words.
But stick-to-itiveness, that's a...
Stick-to-itiveness, I think, is a word.
People say that.
Yeah. But I have a little wrench I'm going to throw on your work, so once we talk about this.
Oh, what kind of wrench?
I'm not going to tell you.
Allen wrench?
Yeah. Definitely an Allen wrench.
So you definitely had some persistence with the sweater.
I think so, yeah.
It took you a month to do it.
But I feel like this is an issue for knitters and crochet. Like people who do projects that are big and they take a long time.
Like that dang blanket.
That blanket took a lot of perseverance.
Or
your barn, for example, that you're building.
It's almost done. No.
I
think Melissa asked me when it's going to be done, and I said never. It'll never be done.
It's those projects that just are the big dream projects, or the projects where you're just working on them for a long time, and you've passed the point of like the novelty. You've passed the point of the yoke that's all exciting, or like the conception of how am I going to build this barn, or
and then
whatever.
You just gotta slog it out.
You just have to slog it out. So I think it's a topic that a lot of like creative people have to think about.
But this one caught you by surprise a little bit.
It did.
Like I think when I started to work on the barn, I thought to myself, this is gonna be. I sort of was telling myself I'll be done by the end of the summer.
For those of you who don't know, he's building we're calling it the box barn.
The box barn.
And it's storage. What are they called? I can never remember the name of the...
2 shipping containers.
And
then a sort of structure around it.
Yeah.
I kind of thought I'll finish by the end of the summer, but no way.
Yeah.
Next summer?
It's looking like it's going to be like a long-term kind of project.
But it's under roof. Once things are under roof, you can kind of slow down because...
The only reason we know that is because we built this house.
And once
together.
we got the roof
and
on
once
it,
we got the
kinda,
roof on it, we were like a little bit like, okay.
At least the water's not pouring in.
We're people that do these long-term things, though.
But your sweater came by surprise. You thought you were just going to whip it out.
I really did. And for whatever reason, it just took a lot of time.
I think you were a little bit more busy. You didn't have as much knitting time.
Yeah, that is true. The semester started. I ended up teaching a class that I wasn't planning on teaching.
You were helping with the barn.
I'm chairing a search.
Yeah,
I'm doing some stuff. So there's there's a lot more on the plate right now than there
was. There anything about the sweater that made you not crank it out?
It was just a really thin yarn and really tiny needles, and it just caught me. Like, I don't know. I think the couple of sweaters before that had been like Lopies, so like a much kind of, you guys have knit Lopi sweaters, or a lot of you have, like, it just goes faster because it's bigger yarn.
Loopy, like a lot of loops.
Lopi, Icelandic yarn.
You had to loop it up. That Lopi stitch will screw you up.
Okay, so how do you push through? Like, this is what we're going to talk about today. Is like, what are the things that kind of keep you motivated? Like, how do you do it?
Okay, there's the old adage. I want to say it's old adage of just like a little bit every day.
Yeah.
You just kind of
chip away.
What is that phrase? Like, eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Oh. Thanks for bringing that in
Something
here.
like that.
No, don't eat elephants.
Isn't that what it is?
We love elephants. We don't eat them.
But isn't there a phrase like that?
Eat an elephant one bite at a time.
There's something like that.
I really am unfamiliar with that idiom.
Something like that.
Anyone's familiar with that idiom?
Anyway, your sweater, you had to eat it one piece at a time.
There are a lot of weird phrases in language like that, though. Like, you always talk about the swimming pool and the spoon.
Yeah,
like, it's like...
Yeah, if you're going to eat a swimming pool full of soup with a spoon... Yeah. You got to do it all the time. You don't just sit down and do it at one point.
I also think finding things to do...
Elephant soup.
Yeah. Now I love elephants.
You also find what? You got advice?
If you find something else to do while you're doing the thing. So, like, if it is simple, like stockinette, once I get to the stockinette...
Yeah, but that doesn't help me with the barn.
Well... But
I can listen to something.
Yeah, podcasts. You can watch something. Well, you can't really watch something. Please, when you're using the power tools, don't watch anything else.
Whatever. A little TV on the side.
A little TV on his glasses. Like, oh, yeah, that's a great episode. And
a little something to keep it going.
Yeah. Or, like, trying to, those progress markers, we were talking about that in the Zoom session. Like, a lot of people will get little, like little doohickeys, like little stitch markers or something. Oh, you can't see this on the camera. It's attached to a thing. Anyway, a lot of people will get, like, little stitch markers and use them as progress keepers. So you put it... you attach it to where you've started for the day, and then by the end of the day, you can actually see progress. Like, you need that kind of motivation.
Okay, so what you're saying is you have like a pack of M&Ms, and as you knit 3 rounds, you get to have an M&M.
Oh man, I used to do that with Doritos. When I was like in college writing papers or reading a book, I'd be like, I read a chapter, Dorito.
Eat a Dorito. Eat a bag of Doritos.
Oh god.
So little rewards.
Reward system is good.
System. Yeah.
Getting a sense of like,
The opposite would be if you're too slow, you gotta like slap a rubber band on your wrist or something. God. A little electric shock.
Can you imagine trying to do that while you're knitting? You're like, I'm knitting not fast enough. Like, that would not be. But that is a therapy thing. I don't know if it's therapy. System. That doesn't seem right.
Well, the way I do the barn, now you don't do this with your sweaters. I think you should.
Okay.
Just a little advice from the outside, All right. The way I do it with the barn is I'm always making a video, so the next section of the barn building is kind of motivated by the video, and the video is motivated by the next section.
I mean, that's what the podcast is.
Okay. So your goal is to finish the sweater.
So that I can talk about it on the podcast.
Talk about the podcast.
Yeah. But this one just took a few episodes. I looked back, it was like 2 episodes ago. You were on. We were talking about punch.
And the mannequin had like the half sweater.
No, I had a swatch. That was it. Yeah. So I have been using this sweater to do some tutorials. So that's good.
All right, now. Is the next sweater going to be micro yarn or are you going to be...
So we were talking about this in the Zoom group too, because Rosie was teasing me. She said, now Melissa, I do remember you saying you were going to do something with like chunkier yarn. Yeah. So I am going to try. But the next sweater may very well be part of the TV Knitting KAL, and that one is like I have to design it myself because I saw an image of it in a movie. Oh. It was a Miley Cyrus movie.
Okay.
No, I was waiting for the reaction. You didn't get any.
I'm trying to think. She wears sweaters? I've only seen little crop tops.
It wasn't her. It was her friend. Had like a really great sweater on during the scene in the movie, and I was like snapping pictures of it.
Okay.
So that's gonna take a little while. Okay, but here's
hold on. But the basic idea is you build a barn and then you build a woodshed, like something small afterwards.
Something smaller, simpler,
easier.
But that's not simpler. So maybe I'll do a
birdhouse.
Maybe I'll do like just a Lopi sweater in between. That's just kind of like
use that Lopi stitch. Lope it up.
Okay, but here's my wrench for you. How do you know when to quit?
Oh.
If something really is...
It transitions from project to long-term project to that thing's never going to be finished.
And we all have those things sitting in project bags, or like, you know, like the steel sitting in the barn. Or,
No, that's all good.
Oh, no, not the steel.
But the sweater I'm knitting right now?
It's right there. We can stare at it. It's in a project bag.
I'm not knitting. I haven't knitted on that thing.
Yeah, so when do you quit?
When do you know to quit?
When do you know, yeah. Wow, we just really did that wrong. When do you know when?
When do you quit?
Anyway.
When do you quit knowing when to quit?
When do you quit?
When do you quit knowing how to quit?
When do you give up? Yeah.
Well, when it's no longer happening.
But does it just have to do with your own happiness with the project? Like, because sometimes you just persevere.
No, sometimes you don't have any happiness with the project, but you still get it done.
You still get it done.
Yeah, it's just not. It's done.
You just don't think it's.
But it takes a real. Like, I'm looking at that little sweater bag right now, and I'm
you're thinking about it.
It's not done.
But you know what you did with the sweaters? You actually looked at me one day and said, maybe you could finish it. So maybe that's one way to know. It's
it would be better.
Pass it on to someone else.
I think it would be a better sweater. It was a very simple. It was just a tube, no shaping.
It wasn't going to be a better sweater, but you needed me to finish the upper yoke anyway.
I think it was, it wasn't too small.
It was a little too small.
So maybe that's why I got discouraged.
Yeah. When you kind of know that the outcome isn't going to actually be any good.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things
with
this sweater. I was a little worried, like the sizing or the shaping, and I was like, oh no, am I actually going to like it in the end? So you lose your mojo a little bit. And then, but if you can push through, then I love this sweater.
It's a really great sweater.
Beautiful sweater. So
once you washed it and blocked it and all that
stuff. It just
stuff.
needed to like relax, and it was good. The sizing was right. I trusted the math. I'm very bad at. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes a long-term project is a fallacy we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
In fact, it's a non-happening event.
It's a no-term project. It's done. It was dead in the water.
Give it away.
Yeah, and that's okay too. We've done that. We've given up on it.
It's a shameful act.
Oh my god. Don't tell that to the poor
But it's true, yeah, you gotta give it up. Bring it to the garage sale.
Yeah.
We bought stuff like that at garage sales, half-finished things, and the new person takes it on.
You bought a dollhouse once that somebody had
No, that was half-eaten by mice. It was not half-finished.
It was one of those
flat. Did we finish it?
No, I think we passed it on to the next person.
We got it far enough. We were the stewards that kind of moved it.
That's right. Maybe that's the way. It's stewardship. You're just like, I'm not going to finish this. Maybe somebody else will. My dad put a model plane outside on the curb the other day. He was talking about, and it's like, he wasn't going to finish building it.
Passed it on. So, do you have any long-term knitting projects right now?
That sweater, the movie sweater. From the Miley Cyrus movie. That one is going to be a long term because I got to design it. I got to figure out the yarn. I got to do.
But nothing that you've started, like a sweater or a blanket you started a few months ago.
Oh, there's that one blanket.
You got a blanket? You're in the middle of a blanket right now?
No, I wouldn't say middle.
By middle, I mean.
By middle, I see.
First.
There are a few strips of the blanket done.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll ever.
I've got a few of those around here.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I keep meaning to go back to it and pick it up because that's usually how I do blankets. Because it's modular.
It's just not like inspiring.
But I don't know.
Or something.
And I have a pair of socks, those knee socks that I really love.
I wasn't going to mention those knee socks. You're not going to finish that. Those are done.
I know.
They're done.
I know. I should take the Ravelry project page down.
Because that was years ago.
But I have one whole sock done and the other one is almost done.
But it's been 5 or 6 years. It's just a pair of socks.
I know.
I mean, not to diminish socks.
They're beautiful, though.
All right,
I picked them up
in London. You gonna finish it?
I picked up the yarn. I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
The London sock.
I'm not into socks. Everyone knows that.
So. Well, you've knitted some socks.
I knit a lot of socks, especially for other people, but I don't. And these are knee socks for me, and I don't really wear my own hand knit socks. I don't like them that much.
Yeah.
They're because I like knee socks, and they don't have enough elastic in the top. And
you can get better at it. Well, I'm just saying, like, you.
I don't feel like not good at it. I just feel like I don't like it.
It's just not your jam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's what you find out sometimes with a long-term project.
Yeah, with the failure.
It's
when to quit.
It's just not your thing.
Maybe it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not going to quit the barn.
No, I love the barn. I really do. I love it.
Yeah.
It's just been a slow thing.
Yeah.
Plus, there's like other jobs going on and things, and
yeah.
Now I'm waiting on a guy to do the concrete, and that's going to be next month,
yeah.
and he's never going to show up, and that'll be like next year, and
Meanwhile, I'm not going to stop knitting sweaters from like patterns in other languages that need technical knowledge.
Just be slow.
Yeah, just slow.
Just do other stuff.
Just fun. Get through them. Don't leave them. No, leave no sweater behind. That's the new motto. Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
It was nice to talk.
Good luck with your projects.
Thanks. You too. Good luck with the barn. Go finish it. So I hope you enjoyed having Spencer come on. It's always fun to have him come up to the yarn room. And I'm going to go work on my TV knitting, maybe sit out in the sunshine for a little while. I hope you have something wonderful planned for your Sunday afternoon, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.